Before you tonight is a proposed amendment of the zoning code to allow accessory dwelling units within the city of Moscow. And I just wanted to begin by going through what exactly accessory dwelling units are. And they're separate additional living unit that is incidental and accessory to a principal dwelling unit on a single lot. They're generally small in scale. This equates to a studio or one bedroom unit. They usually exist and do not change the character of the property or the neighborhood. It can be principal structure or detached structure, so it could be above a detached garage, or it could be attached to the principal structure, in this case a single-family dwelling, or within the single-family dwelling as well. Owner occupancy on the property is generally required, and that could be either within the principal or accessory unit, so above the garage in the unit, or within the principal dwelling, single-family dwelling, whichever one. You may have heard them called granny flats, mother-in-law units, or accessory apartments, which were common in the 60s. And I wanted to go through why some communities allow accessory dwelling units within their jurisdiction. And they're intended to create new housing while preserving the character of the neighborhood. So they're on a lot with a single-family dwelling, creating density within the existing neighborhood. They allow efficient use of housing stock in the public infrastructure. We're not expanding neighborhoods outside of the city. We're using the existing neighborhoods for accessory dwelling units. They provide affordable housing opportunities within the city. They also provide smaller household housing opportunities. They're generally 600 square feet or less in size. And they also provide a means of income for residents that are living within the single-family dwellings. They also may help allow family members to care for elderly or disabled while providing independent living opportunities. The Commission first started talking about accessory dwelling units with a 2012 citizen survey where they had asked two questions. The first one being, would respondents support accessory dwelling units in their neighborhood? And the vast majority, 63%, strongly agreed or agreed with that statement. Just had about 17% disagree or strongly disagree. Second question they asked was, would respondent likely add an accessory dwelling unit to the property? Pretty much had 47% disagree with that statement. You had about 26% neutral, which indicates that maybe at one point in the future they'd look at adding an accessory dwelling unit, but probably not right now. We also had 13% agree with that. So large portion of the population supports allowing accessory dwelling units in their neighborhood, but not a whole lot of them are likely to add one at this point in time. So from there, Planning and Zoning Commission researched ADU provisions from 7 other cities. They had taken a look at Missoula, Montana, Coeur d'Alene, Boise, Spokane, Portland, Seattle, and Bozeman, Montana. All those communities researched use similar purpose statements that we previously addressed in the beginning of the presentation for allowing accessory dwelling units. Some of the common considerations that were typically observed when we looked at these jurisdictions was where they were allowed, which varied from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The scale varied as well. It included some minimum and maximum square footages. There was some jurisdictions that allowed percentage of principal structure or even lot coverage standards that may vary for attached or detached ADUs. Height restrictions varied. Most common was a lower height restriction for detached structures, accessory structures. Parking was common, and typically that was one additional space was required for the accessory dwelling unit, and that's on top of the spaces that are required for the single-family dwelling. Some of them required those to be directed off of the alley when there was an alley present. Owner occupancy was almost always required, so the owner having to live in the detached accessory dwelling unit or the single-family dwelling. There were occupancy limits. Some used the definition of a family within their zoning codes. Others just limited the number of occupants to 2 within the accessory dwelling unit. And then some regulated the entrance of ADUs. So maybe only one entrance facing a principal street is allowed under theirs, under those jurisdictions. There were other provisions, limits of 1 ADU per lot. There was some jurisdictions that required annual registration, inspections, and there was also conditional use permit required for ADUs in some zones. So from the research and the 2012 citizen survey results, the Commission then decided to move forward and conduct a first of 2 open house meetings, and that happened on January 22nd, 2014. Press release was sent out and the Commission conducted the first open house meeting. Included within that open house was a survey that attendees were allowed to complete at the end of the open house. And that was also posted online. We had created a project website for about 3 to 4 weeks. A survey was posted to the project website. We had 28 respondents. From that, we ended up going forward with another open house meeting. And this is to go over, introduce ADUs for those who had not attended the first meeting, but also to go over some of the standards which are typically required of ADUs in some jurisdictions. And this occurred on April 2nd, 2014, and this was the second open house. Also included, this is very similar to the first open house, included a survey, and they also posted that survey and made it available online on the project website for about a month after that open house meeting, which brought us into May. There was a biased party that had flooded our online survey, and this happened for a period of a couple days. There were a little under 100 surveys submitted, and they were all very similar. So we had identified that the survey results were biased, and then we needed to throw the results out. So this brought us into summer of 2014. Commission elected to not proceed forward during the summer months, and that was to make sure citizens were back in town from summer break for those residents that either worked or attended the universities. And that brought us to October 2014 when the Commission once again picked up accessory dwelling units, and they decided to send out a direct mailed survey to a random sample of residents, and this was to address the second open house meeting where we had received biased results. Mailed it out to 342 residential addresses. There was a 23% response rate from those surveys, and that equates to 78%, or 78 completed surveys. 9 of those were undeliverable. So they included the same 2 questions that were part of that 2012 citizen survey, as well as the January open house survey that was the likelihood of you wanting to allow accessory dwelling units in your neighborhood, and then the likelihood of you having one on your property. Also contained questions about allowing ADUs, the usage of ADUs if permitted, some standards for ADUs, as well as some ownership information, demographic information from the survey. We had compiled that into aggregate results, as well as divided it into R1, R2, as well as R3 and R4 responses. We had coded those surveys in order to get those results, and those are compiled within your packet before you this evening in the survey results section. And so these are the telling results when comparing the 2012 citizen survey from the October 2014 direct mailed survey. As you can tell, these are very similar. So from the 2012 citizen survey, you've got about 63% agree that they would support allowing ADUs in their neighborhood, and same number here with agree in the October 2014 direct mailed survey. So these are fairly telling about population of Moscow and their support for accessory dwelling units. That brings us to the proposed ordinance before you tonight. Currently proposed to allow accessory dwelling units as accessory uses within the ag forest, farm ranch, suburban residential, and R1 through R4 zoning districts. So we would insert under the permitted accessory uses and structures, just add accessory dwelling units, and those would be subject to the specific use standards within Chapter 12 of the zoning code. Within R1 through R3, we would propose to eliminate accessory living quarters serving as a guest house or domestic servant quarters. These are essentially guest houses within the zoning code, which are allowed through a conditional use permit within those zones. We currently don't have any on file as going through the CUP process and being approved. There may be a couple of those out there, and those would be non-conforming uses and would be allowed to remain, or they could potentially be converted into accessory dwelling units if the ordinance is passed.